As a business professional, you want to eliminate friction in your business and life and be in control of your daily results to see progress in achieving your goals. Being productive is a continuous improvement process that everybody struggles with in one way or another. Welcome to the Productivity Mastery Method podcast. I'm your host, Chris Nixon, and I'm a productivity consultant. Every week, I'll share tips, insights, and interviews with guest experts that will help you think critically so you can take actionable steps to be more productive. Now that we've got this out of the way, let's dive into the episode. What is your name and what field of work are you in?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Mackenzie, and I'm an artist and author based in the Pacific Northwest. My work is a mix of photography, graphic design, and illustration, as well as book publishing.
Great. So a goal planning system is a set of tools that takes you from vision to achievement. It's all the tools in between, right from setting that vision all the way down to how you track and manage your tasks, everything in between. So during this podcast series, we're talking about these planning systems and people's journeys to discovering what works best for them in that regard. So with that in mind, tell us, what sort of a goal planning system do you use and how does that play a part in what you've described?
Yeah, so I use a mix of print and digital tools.
Okay.
My goal planning all starts with the creative downloading, I like to call it, usually with the sketchbook, often a brainstorming session, and that's when I just visualize what it is I'm aiming for. And having that sketchbook place to just jot down notes, very free form, creative flow, letting the idea formulate so that I know what it is I'm aiming for. Then I like to use a tool, it's called the Rocketbook, and I don't know if you've heard of that. And it's essentially a notebook that is like a whiteboard paper. So you can write in it and then you scan it and it goes onto a digital format and then you can wipe it clean, which I really find has been fantastic. So that also gets tangible notes, action items, things that I want to then be able to put on my computer and work with more closely. And
so is
then,
that the one that you put in the microwave to clear?
Oh, I haven't microwaved it. I use it's a little water spritzer and a microfiber cloth. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so you actually wipe it off. Okay.
Yeah, you actually wipe it off, which has a very soothing kind of a Zen activity to it of clearing away the ideas and knowing you've made some progress on them. And then the third part of my system after the visualization with Sketchbook, the Rocketbook that gets the action items and gets the things digitized, is then I use a coloring journal, which is actually something that I've created with my family and published through our company. And that is a mix of coloring design pages with lined pages. So it's a nice, simple 6x9 journal. And in that, I do my daily check-ins. So that is usually in the evening when I'm done with my workday. I start with a little coloring because that just helps ground me into the present moment, taps into a little mindfulness. I can just replay the day in my mind. And then I write down some of the key things that I achieved that day, little notes of celebration, just anything that was noteworthy. So that way I have something to easily reflect back on and is something that I can keep with me as a reminder of what I've accomplished and is really inspiration as well as a tool for tracking and record keeping.
Okay, so I'm really interested in this, the coloring and transitioning into the journaling. So are there different designs every day and you just randomly choose one? How do you choose what to color?
So I have it laid out so there's one coloring page and then 7 lined pages. So throughout the journal, there's 12 different illustrations. So the concept is each day is about a week or sometimes each page in the journal, I write maybe one a day. So therefore, each illustration I'm coloring throughout the full week. Okay. And so I just start in on one illustration and I write in the pages after it until I'm through with that section and then start a new section. And it kind of keeps a nice rhythm to my process.
And are the coloring pages abstract designs or are they actual characters or what are we looking at?
The books that I've made so far, I've created 3 and they're all nature and animal themed. So some of them are animal portraits, some of them are playful adventure nature scenes. And and they can be colored with pencils or crayons, but I often just use my ballpoint pen because and just doodle and add textures and patterns with it that way as well.
Okay, so it's really about the tactile and the physical aspect of doing the coloring more than the colors and things that might come from.
Yeah, and it can go many ways, of course, if you're wanting to use all the colors, but sometimes I find just using one single pen, one color is able to really keep me focused on just a little bit of that time to tap into the mindfulness. And I've built a habit around it so that I kind of settle into that creative flow zone easily through the coloring. So then when I write in my journal with keeping track of what I've done that day or what successes I've had in my business or my project, I'm able to be really present and clear-minded and focused.
So how do you know then to switch gears? So you start coloring. What kind of signal do you get or feeling do you get that says, okay, it's time to write?
That's a really good question. I'd say it's once in my mind I have sort of walked through my day and I have seen sort of replayed what, the highlights, the lowlights gotten to be, oh yeah, there's the point of that's worth remembering. That's where I had a success. That was really, maybe that was a challenge, but I overcame it. And so once I sort of have in my mind a few key points or the memories start flowing into place, because sometimes when you sit down after the end of the day, it's just like your mind can be a jumble. You feel really mentally exhausted. And so the coloring kind of gives me a little pick me up and the time to just sit still, be contemplative and reflect on how things went for the day.
And if you start to feel writer's block, do you flip back to coloring a little bit?
I do, yes. It actually is really good for, getting out of, and that's one of the reasons I started doing this is I'd found with using coloring books and things like that, it would spark my writing. I would be coloring and then all of a sudden creative light bulb would go off and I'd whip out some paper and start writing. And so I realized that the combination is really effective.
Wow. So let's talk about that discovery a little bit. How did you discover that this was your thing?
Oh, that is a wonderful, wonderful question. So I started coloring myself back in 2015, kind of around the time Joanna Basford kind of blew up the adult coloring scene. And I started hearing about how it was so relaxing and such a great tool and really fun. Of course, I hadn't colored since I was a child. So I started coloring a little bit and I found that it really loosened up my creative energy and my thoughts. And so I soon, in true, entrepreneurial illustrator fashion, started creating my own coloring designs because I wanted ones that had a little more white space than a lot of the ones that I was finding in the market at that time. And so over the course of a handful of years, I started publishing them more, sharing them with friends, and over time developed a product line with it because I realized there was a need that I was finding for myself that I really enjoyed using coloring to help me relax and just to have that bite-sized bit of art making that I could add into every day.
Mm-hmm. So what did you discover after you started using that technique then with the coloring? What did you discover about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I discovered that it's easier than I thought to refuel my creativity. And that you do have to make a habit of it, though, to find that time to relax and be still and allow ideas to process and come to you. And so I find that's where it links in with the writing. When I am sitting there coloring, whether I'm talking to people or just by myself, it's naturally, I've done research on it now, coloring naturally is very meditative and draws you into the present moment and has that very mind-soothing elements to it. And so I noticed that when I would color, I would just not only feel the relaxation benefits, but my mind would kind of let go of stress and worries so that ideas and clarity of vision could fill in that place instead.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about behind the Rocketbook a little bit. So you scan it from the Rocketbook. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, it goes into Google Drive. I have it set up. You can set it up with Dropbox and all the various other cloud options. I happen to like the Google Suite because it's just cross-platform, very accessible. And so with the Rocketbook, what's really cool is it can actually transcribe your writing as well as create checklists and also just a PDF image of whatever you wrote. So a lot of my Rocketbook notes, sometimes they're kind of half illustration, half text. So then I use that to be the launching pad for an illustration or a book design. Other times they're very much like, oh, this is a whole outline of an article or an ebook or a project. And so from there, it's in Google Drive so I can access it. And then I've also started using the app called Trello. Have you heard of that one?
Sure have, yep.
Yeah. And so I used that one as well for just, those really easy, like, tangible check-offs and some accountability sharing with other colleagues and stuff to have shared project boards and things. So that from the Trello, I try not to have anything stored where I really invested in that system because I find sometimes apps make changes and suddenly I'm not pleased with them. So I like to keep that more of like, hey, here's an action item because they make it really inviting and easy to check things off and share links and stuff. But outside of that, the Rocketbook is the kind of the way that I can go from handwriting and then into the digital.
So can we dig just a little deeper into the Google Drive then? What does that look like? Is it Google Docs?
Yeah, so Google Drive, I use the whole G Suite, as they like to call it. I use a lot of the Google Forms for things like project client contracts and for having submissions for things like wholesale orders and whatnot for when I'm selling my books. And so I have a whole, the various folders in my Google account for, okay, here's these contract forms, here's where I do my writing, here's photos and media kit, things that I want to be able to access easily.
So you've got lots of different reference folders organized by folder.
So that way when I go from at my computer where I've got all my files to out on the go on the phone and you want to be able to, real quick productivity wise, send somebody a reply and be able to include the appropriate information, those essentials I like to keep in a cloud document or a cloud folder. And then for projects themselves, I usually have one Google Doc file for the month that is just where I go to write everything. Because I find that if I write in too many different apps or emails, then you're like, oh, that was great what I wrote. I want to reclick that to use it again. I like just having it in one file so that I just get all my first draft writing there. And some of it's blog posts, some of it's emails, some of it's ideas. And that's just sort of a one key piece of that part. Yeah.
That file can get pretty long some months, I'll bet.
You can. Yeah. But it's nice to just, again, minimizing the quantity of files is one thing that I've worked hard on with my productivity and why I like the mix of the Rocketbook and the coloring journal is that keeps things offline where it's hands-on writing because I find my ideas flow more fluidly from my mind to a handwritten pen and pencil. And it keeps, we do so much of our work digitally these days that I like to keep a little bit old school and traditional pen and paper.
Yeah. So if we really look down deep at the basic to-do, the next actions, are those pretty well done before they hit digital then? Or do you end up uploading checklist from Rocketbook that you need to do later?
Yeah, I do a bit of both. Yeah, I like to put the checklists on Rocketbook up into Google Drive and in there. Sometimes they're lists that I will use again because they're maybe for a project. Like, okay, for whenever I do this type of project, I need to hit all these bullets. So it's like I get them written and then into the correct place. And I really find that for specific tangible, like, okay, tomorrow morning I've got to do these 3 things, I use either the Trello app or just put it in my calendar, digital calendar of like, okay, at 9:00, do these 3 items or start in on them, because I realized that I've done a lot of planners over the years, and I got kind of tired of flipping through them later and like finding nuggets of wisdom and then also just the same list of things that I needed to do. So I've kind of tried to streamline my process to minimize the excess of checklists.
What are some of the other things that you tried along the way?
Yeah. Let's see. I've tried bullet journals, and I really liked elements of those. And so I've brought in that kind of that daily checklist and kind of the ability to fresh start each day. But I found that I just didn't stick with it. There was just I think just the system was a little too complicated for me. And that's why I kind of switched to the more simple. The coloring journal has the creative art element that I liked in a lot of the bullet journals. I always loved, everyone's images, their bullet journals were so beautiful. I was like, oh, those are amazing, but then for me, it didn't quite jive. And I've tried so many different planners that have inspirational quotes and prompts, and I can't recall the names and brands of them now, but I always, that was always a very big thing for me. But okay, I'm picking my planner for the year. Which one's it going to be? And I've done a lot of different digital apps, from Evernote and Asana to just using Google Drive. And the one thing I love about the apps is when you can have cross-platform between every computer you own, your phone, your tablets. I love being able to access things that way. But I found I was getting a little putting too much of like my ideas into the apps, and then sometimes they would switch to like, oh, their premium membership changed and you're this or that, or they're not, it just would be, I realized I didn't want to use them in a way where I was putting all my ideas into them rather than kind of more just the prompts, if that makes sense.
So you want to protect your intellectual property in a place that you can continue to own.
Yeah, exactly. And to access easily, where it's like, even with the one file on Google Drive that I put, type my ideas into, it's nice. Like I can even just export that as a PDF at the end of the month and archive it, and then I have my tangible journal and my Rocketbook files. Those all just get uploaded to the cloud. And when I do my annual or quarterly cleaning of the digital system, I usually, offload everything and back it up on my home archives. Yeah.
So what's the very best part of the system for you?
I would say, I think the simplicity for me. I've pared down a lot of my productivity system over the years, and I really enjoy the daily check-ins that I hold myself accountable to. When you work from home, it's easy to just flow from the workday into home and then back and forth. And so I try to really have that time with my journal be like, okay, no, I'm turning off all the tech. I'm done with work for the day. I'm going to check in and take a little log of how it went. And that moment of quiet reflection is really a highlight for me.
So how do you do that? How do you stay accountable to doing that?
Yeah, I think I worked really hard to build it as a habit. And I love the book Power of Habit and learning about the cue, routine, reward process. And I have quite literally rewarded myself with chocolate on many, many occasions, enough times that I kind of crave that time of sitting down with my journal, because I'd be like, all right, I sit down and I get some chocolate every time I do this. And it sounds, I laugh because it seems so silly. It's the same way I train my dog, but it's really, it worked to help me, encourage me to do this thing that I had decided I wanted to show up for and show up for the check-ins. And I also am flexible with myself where it doesn't matter if I miss a day. It's once I've built that habit, I've learned to accept that it's okay to just, missed a day. That's okay.
It's all about mindset, isn't it? It's how you talk to yourself when those situations occur. So then let's go forward now to, I missed it yesterday.
Yeah.
Mindset at that point. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm mostly thinking that it's, make sure that it doesn't become, that I stick with the habit.
Okay.
And that it doesn't, a missed day or two, maybe you're traveling, maybe you're this, you're that, is totally acceptable in my mind. And but I like to ensure that I check in again, and just like, hey, okay, yeah, close up shop that day and really take note of a few things that were key.
And I think that that's so important. You said that it's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just that's what happens sometimes, and that's part of our routine because we're humans and we're not 100% predictable all the time.
Exactly.
But if we turn around and tell ourselves that, I failed, then that becomes our identity. So I just love it that your identity is that's okay, and this is my habit, and this is what I typically do, and that's good, right?
Yeah, thank you. And it's actually something that why I like the combination of the Rocketbook and the coloring journal, and is that there's no actual calendars in them. So, in previous times when I'd have a planner and I missed all these days or they had prompts to write about and fill in, it was like whole pages and sections of the planner I missed out on. Mm-hmm. With the coloring journal, since it's just lined pages and the illustrations to color, it doesn't matter if there's a gap. You just keep going. And the same with how I now structure my digital checklists, as I try to have it be more of like, okay, these are prompts, these are your priority, but sometimes new priorities come up in the day. So it's, it kind of, keeping that mindset of it's okay. And they're there as a tool to help me remember what to do, but what I'm actually doing can really vary what's important. You find that in the moment.
Is there anything about your system that you'd like to improve that you're kind of noodling on? You don't quite know the solution, but you think that there's opportunity?
Yeah, I'd say finding ways to really streamline the digital side of my work, where it's like, okay, I love pouring ideas and mapping plans out onto paper, but then having it be a little more streamlined so that it's doesn't get lost in the digital world. Like I said, and once it's in Google Drive or in your productivity app like Trello and stuff, you're like, you can build these boards and new lists really quickly. And so trying to just ensure that I don't get ahead of myself in my planning before I do the doing, you could say.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess it is definitely out of sight, out of mind. We used to have to put things into boxes and hide them. Now we can just hit save and it's gone.
Exactly, yeah. And there's a beauty to that at times where you just want to idea dump and then, okay, that's out for later. But yeah, it's definitely the continuing to find time to kind of clear out the archives and go through things is, I think, something that I'm still, working on with the system.
So would you mind sharing some successes that you credit to your system?
Yeah. I'd say a big one has been in just the management of my mindset through my work and being able to have calm, clear focus, because I've been really analyzing myself and watching how I do things, being able to, get up and know, because I I checked in the night before. I know what the priority is for that day ahead of time. And so that's, it's maybe not a tangible goal, but it is such a huge one for me of having that mindset in a good place and the habit flow in a really good place.
How do you think it's affected your time management, your effective use of time, say?
Yeah, I'd say it's improved it because I'm able to be a bit more focused and not so, scattered with my ideas. I've worked a lot on honing things in so that when I have the brilliant idea or a new project starting, I know where that information needs to go. For example, I'm just starting a new book publishing project with a client. And so I know I've already created previously the maps of the project. And now I have a system in place where I know, okay, I can write down this specific project's outline that I need to get done in my Rocketbook, get that up into my Google Drive for reference, and then in Trello, pop in the daily, okay, this is due next week, make sure you get the manuscript read. And then with my journal, I have that time to really reflect, make sure I don't get too bustling and buzzing in my work that I can't just come back to, ground zero and be really calm and focused. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So tell me about the accountability on the Trello experience. How does that go?
Oh, it's really helpful. We chat every couple weeks over, video chat and talk about how things are going. And we're of different industries, but we're both trying to write more articles and get our word out there and put ourselves out there with our work more. And so having the Trello board, we, at the end of our chats, would just share, okay, here's what we're aiming to achieve before we get together next. And then we have a little system to be like, okay, here, move it to this board, it's done. Or here's a win to celebrate if like an article gets published or you achieve something we're very excited about. And so knowing that there's someone else that you're like, oh yeah, have that accountability has been really, really positive, and it motivates me to check in on that one and be like, okay, yeah, I worked on that. Perfect.
So back to the art, the coloring part of it. Yeah. Should everybody try that?
I think so. Yeah? I may be a little biased, but no, I really do. I've been studying coloring as a tool for stress relief, for relaxation, and for creativity for a good number of years now. And I've written a book called Coloring is Good for You, 13 Reasons to Color Daily. So I definitely believe in it. And the reasons is there's so many known benefits to making art. And as somebody who has been an artist my whole life, I know that I know how to tap into them, but it's also can be very challenging to sit down with a piece of white paper and make art. Even as somebody who does that and professionally, it can get very challenging. So coloring takes away that initial, need to know what you're going to create and provides an outlet so you can just drop right into making art. And for anyone to do it, it helps with relaxation. It helps with just taking that pause in our days. It gets you offline, just in your tangible reality. I always pair it with some big, deep breaths and a little bit of like grounding into the moment. And it really, for me, has been a hugely beneficial addition to my life.
So Jennifer says that she doesn't have time for coloring, doesn't have time for that kind of nonsense. What would you say?
I would say you can make time for anything, and that time is also what you make of it. And knowing your why is the key. For me, I know that I want to color each day because I've turned it into kind of a integrated self-care activity that makes self-care fun. And as a creative, an entrepreneur, a anyone, we all have the need for keeping our mind happy, relaxed, and fueled so that we can be creative. Because even if you don't make art for a living, you use creativity in many ways. And so I think getting clear on why, maybe you want to color because you're improving your ability to use your imagination, or you want to get better at making art. Or maybe it's just because you want to start creating time for screen-free relaxation, or just carve out time in your day where you're like, no, this is recreation time, because when we're really busy is when we need it the most. I'd say one other thing that has helped me with my productivity is there's a book called Moonwalking with Einstein that I've read, and it's outlines the concept of the memory palace. I'm not sure if have you heard of that?
I've heard a little bit about it. This rings a bell.
Yeah, and so essentially it's just teaching, it explores memory and how to use it and how to activate it, and in that, we remember spatially, like you can always remember how to get to the kitchen in a house you've been to once, that type of thing. And so learning how to use my memory more, I found a good handful of years ago, I was outsourcing a lot of my memory to my devices. Oh, the phone told me to do this. Okay, I'll go do it. Okay, I'll input everything into my calendar. It'll remind me at the right time to do it. But by cultivating my own memory better and creating a natural flow to my day that aligned with the natural cycle of the morning energy, the afternoon energy, the evening energy, that was probably, those two things really helped with productivity, because I was, learning how to, train my own brain better and structure my day so that I was working around how my energies naturally flowed.
So let me see if I understand this then.
Yeah.
If we go way back, you were probably remembering everything in your mind, and then you outsourced all of your memory to gadgets and systems.
Yes.
And then now you've kind of merged them back into more of a holistic flow throughout the day?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's, I like to have the tangible check-ins with, my coloring journal, as well as I have times that I sit down and check in with my devices, update. Okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write my to-do list for tomorrow on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
But I have built in that my memory has improved because I've been practicing it. So I often don't have to rely on an alert telling me to do something. It's more that I've pre-planned it, visualized the next day, and then I'm able to follow through with, the references there of like, check off that and stuff. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So Mackenzie, I'd like to invite you to share about your business, the services you offer, and how should people reach out to contact you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the biggest thing that I want to share is my coloring book collection, and that you can find at journeyofcolors.com. And that is where I share all the things I create. It's got my coloring book, my coloring journals, my coloring postcards, as well as other fun art that I just put up as I make it, and various print-on-demand, tote bags and t-shirts are coming. And so that's really, I encourage everyone to give coloring a try. And even if it's just to be sitting and coloring, to think about what you're going to do the next day, that really is a great tool that I found for helping with that visualization process of how the day is going to flow. And through that, you can also find, there will be contact information on there so you can get in touch with me if you're curious about working with me. I do, if you're in the area or nearby, I do custom photography as well as book editing and publishing for independent publishing for people. So helping you get your story out there. And and I, in addition to that, offer just custom tailored creativity classes to help with understanding, how to get going in your creative outlets.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you too. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you think the show is of value and a must-listen for someone, feel free to share it with your productivity friends. And if you do, I'd be so grateful for your support. If you want to find the links, show notes, and resources, no matter what episode you're listening to, head over to chrisnixon.com/podcast. That's CHRISNIXON.com/podcast. If you want to connect with me on social, you can find me on Facebook at chrisnixon.com/Facebook or LinkedIn at chrisnixon.com/LinkedIn. Join the discussion for this episode on my LinkedIn company page, linkedin.com/company/chrisnixon. That's all for this episode, and remember, productivity is a continuous improvement process. Space Dust by Aerotone, copyright 2022, licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution License, courtesy of dig.ccmixter.org. This episode of the Productivity Mastery Method podcast is copyright to Chris Nixon 2022, all rights reserved.